Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to delve into the world of Azure Service Connectors, a powerful tool that simplifies the way to connect front-end to various back-end services. Let's explore how this innovative solution can streamline the service-to-service connections and enhance your Azure experience. My name is Bilel MAROUEN. I'm Cloud Technical Architect and Microsoft Certified Trainer. Let's take a coffee and start. So Azure Connector Services is a valuable extension resource provider in Azure that facilitates the creation and management of your Azure services. It offers a user-friendly experience to configure networking, authentication, and establish connection between your front-end and back-end services easily using only a single command line or from few clicks from the portal. You can enable the service in various front-end services like Azure App Service, Azure Container Apps, Azure Functions, and so on. And in today's example, we are going to check how to connect an Azure App Service to a storage account and a SQL database the most effective way. So let's jump to Azure portal and show you what I have prepared for today's video. So I have created an Azure web app, which is a .NET Core application. For the moment, I do have a connection string for my SQL database. I don't have any other environment variable, and I have VNet integration enabled in my VNet. Then I have created a SQL database, but I do enable my public IP to test the environment locally, and I do enable the exception for Azure services. Pay attention when you have this enabled because this will enable the connection from any subscription, even for your customers that have an IP address in Azure. So do not do this in production environments. This is only for testing. And then I have created a service account with a storage account container, which is called demo, where I did create an index HTML file and we will try to connect to it from our .NET Core application and retrieve its content. So let's check the configuration of our VNet as well. So here we have two subnets, the app subnet, which is the VNet integration for our app service, and the connector subnet, which will be the private endpoint subnet. Last, we have a .NET Core application to create, delete, update records for Task Planner. I will put you in description below the link for my Git, as I did have some customization to display the content from the storage account. So without further saying, let's start the configuration of our app service. So we go to our web app. Then on the left hand side, we have the service connector menu. We click on it, then we click on create. Here we find all the supported backend services. This goes from the Cosmos DB, Redis Cache, Service Bus for messaging services as well. We have OpenAI service, so we have various backend services supported for the moment. I will put you on the description as well the link for all the supported services that we can have at the time of recording this video. For the moment, let's start with the Azure Blob. This will give a random name for our connection. We choose the subscription for sure, and then we choose our storage account. The client type, this is the front end framework. So here we have a .NET Core application, so this has been detected automatically. On the next step, we choose the authentication mechanism. So we have four different ways, and you need to check from the Microsoft documentation the supported authentication mechanism. In some cases, the user assigned management identity or the system assigned management identity only available through command lines. And using the portal, you will check all the information. So this will be telling you if you need to go through Azure CLI or from the portal. And we will check this, I think, in the second step for the Azure database. This is only supported using the command line. So for the moment, we will stick with the system assigned identity. We choose this one. On the second part, we will configure the network, how the front will connect to the backend at network level. In this step, we are going to enable the service endpoint. So pay attention at this step. So this will not be changing the configuration of your storage account. Let me explain this. So if we go to our service storage account, so here we have the enable all network. So if you keep it like this will not change the public network access to a selected virtual network. So you need to check this and save. Otherwise, it will not be able to alter your configuration. So the service connector don't alter your configuration. This will go check if the prerequisites are there, if the VNet integration is enabled. this will go and check if you are selecting the enable selected virtual network, this will be able, then it will be able to add the subnet of your VNet integration in the virtual network list. So as you can see from this portal, we did select the front-end service, the back-end service, the authentication method. This will be creating a system assigned managed identity for our app service, provide the required permissions at the backend service, which is the storage account. Then this will be enabling the service endpoint at the storage account, configure the VNet integration of the app service with the proper service endpoint, which is the Microsoft Storage service endpoint, at and at the network configuration of the storage account, this will be enabling adding the VNet integration subnet at the configuration. So all this step and configuration will be done directly using the service connector. So let's click on create. This will be running the final validation. This will check if all the requirements are set up, if you do have the right permission. The service connector will be leveraging your permission in order to configure everything. So let's click on create and check what the service connector will help us create. In a couple of minutes, the creation has been completed. So let's go ahead and check on the web app if it did create the managed identity for us. So here the system assigned identity has been created. Let's check the permissions on the storage account. This should assign the storage blob data contributor to our storage accounts on the networking side. So we did choose the service endpoint. Let's go and check on the storage account the configurations. And as you can see, the service connector VNet, which is the app subnet, the VNet integration subnet. So all the configuration has been set up through the service connector. And here from the portal as well, we do have the connection status information. So the configuration is in success status. So this will not only help us configure the prerequisites like the identity, giving it the right permission, configure the networking parameters as well. This will as well provide us the connection status of our backend services. So let's get back to our application and check if the configuration is still working properly. So here from the portal, we refresh our application. We click on the link to fetch the data from the storage account, and it's still working properly. Then in the next step, we are going to configure the configuration for our SQL database. As we saw in the diagram, we need to create the private endpoint for our SQL database. We need to create this will require the private DNS zone with the VNet link to the virtual network. This will require a managed identity or a service connection for our app setup to connect to the Azure SQL database. So all this configuration will be done automatically using the service connector. Another important thing is that the service connector will not alter the configuration of your networking setting. That means if we jump over to the portal and go back to our SQL database, for the moment we have the selected network in place. So this is not disabled. This will only create the private endpoint. This will not change the public configuration of your service. So if your goal is to disable the public access, you need to disable it here first, then to create the service connector. You still be able to do it afterwards. Another thing for these testing purposes, I will go ahead and delete the service connection, because if I keep this in place, this will create another connection string and will add the connection prefix to the name, which is not the same variable environment in my code. So just for my testing purposes, I will delete this and let the service connector recreate the connection string for me using the same name. So let's delete this, confirm, and jump back to our service connector and create the SQL database service connection. So here we are going to choose again from the list the SQL database. This will be given it the name. If we kept the service connection, the existing service connection, this will add at the middle of the service connection the F5722 to differentiate the service connection, and that will allow you to tell which service connection belongs to which connection. So here we will give it let the default configuration. So, and as you can see here, the system assigned managed identity and the user assigned managed identity only supported via Azure CLI. So, for the moment, we are going to check the service connection string, and this is required for the third part of our video when we will be introducing the key vault to secure further our connection string. So let's get the service connection admin name, and let's get the password which was get from the service connection. And at this step, we will use the private link to access our backend services. And as you can see, no private endpoint on the target service is configured for the moment. So we have the option to create the new private endpoint and dynamically allocate IP address over and the new DNS private zone. So this will be provided as with all the prerequisites for our setup. This has choose the available subnet for us as well, which is fine for us. This will be running the filing validation. And once it's validated, we will hit the create button. So now the deployment is succeeded. Let's go ahead and check the created resources for us. So let's refresh the service connector and check the configuration. So this has created the Azure SQL connection string for us. Let's go to the web app and check the service connection. Refresh the connection string in the environment variable section. And here we have the connection string variable created with the same values as we do have before. Then let's go to the SQL server, and here we should have in the private access the private endpoint created. This is in an approved state, and as you can notice here, this hasn't changed the public access setting. So again, the service connector doesn't alter your current configuration. This will only create the private endpoint as we tell it. So if you do need to disable the public network access, you need to do it manually. And before going to our application, let's check from the resource group the private DNS zone that has been created. So as you can see, we do have the database private DNS zone created with the virtual network link to our service connector. Everything has been created for us automatically using the service connection. And let's check if the application is still working properly. So refresh the application, and then let's go to our root page. And as you can see, it was able to fetch the information from our database. So let's create a new entry, task 3, the 12/01/2025, create, and it's working properly. So as you can see, we did protect our backend SQL Server database. We did protect the storage account with the help of Service Connector without any hassle. So in the next step, we are going to check the third version, which is introducing the Key Vault, which will be helping us to protect furthermore the connection string of the Azure SQL database. As you can see for the moment, the connection string do have the password in clear in our connection string. So we will be securing this password into a key vault and everything with the help of the service connector itself. So let's get back to our service connector, select the SQL database and edit its configuration. And here in the authentication pane, we scroll down and in the we will select the store secret in key vault. So this will be asking us to provide the key vault connection, and here we need to create a new one. So key vault, the connection name, the service connection. So it has detected the service connector key vault that we have within our resource group. Next, in the networking side, I do have a private endpoint with my key vault, and then I review. Again, we was able to uh, create a new private endpoint for our key vault if we do not have, but for this testing, I do already have a private key vault, and here we need to paste our password. So the connection for our key vault is created successfully, and then we continue our configuration. Then we go to the networking. We will skip this configuration because we already have the private endpoint in place, and we do save. This will be validating our configuration and updating the SQL database connection string at the environment variable of our app service. Let's wait a couple of seconds and then we will go ahead and check our configuration. As you can see here, we have the key vault connection created. So let's jump to our app service configuration and refresh this page and check the connection string update. And as you can see here, now our app service connection string to the SQL database is updated using the key vault reference. So let's go and check the key vault configuration. And as you can see, the service connector, which is our app service, have the required permission access policies to our key vault. So let's jump over to our backend, refresh our application, and check if we are able to communicate with our database using the key vault reference for our connection string. Let's create a new task. This will be task 4, the 12/01/2025, and hit create. And the task has been created. So the communication to our database still working properly. So in today's video, we saw how to create connection string for our SQL database, secure the connection string on a key vault, creating a connection endpoint to our storage account, everything using the service connector to create the private endpoint, enable the service endpoint, configure the subnets, providing the permissions, create the system assigned managed identity or a connection string directly from the portal without intervening. Hope this video was helpful. Please subscribe, follow me for more videos. Stay safe and cheers. Bye bye.